Welcome in, everyone. Thanks for joining. It's a special ND Talk hosted by myself, Kyler Collom. We're taking a little trip down North Dakota memory lane where we get to know North Dakota a little bit better. And I'm joined here by former state legislator Marvin Nelson. Thanks for joining today, Marvin.
Fun to be here.
It's going to be a great time. We've got an interesting conversation lined up. We're going to talk about the 2021 redistricting that happened within the state of North Dakota.
Yeah.
You're going to you used to represent part of the area that
I did at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was. I testified in favor of the tribal proposal at the legislature, and I sat in on the lawsuit, the hearing,
Sure.
when they did that, and been seeing it, the results ever since.
Transpire all the way now to where it sits at the foot of the Supreme Court, but things are iffy on if it'll actually get picked up or not. But
yeah, if they follow precedents,
mm-hmm.
the tribes will win. But this Supreme Court seems very willing to not follow precedents.
And we'll get into that in a little bit, but let's start all the way back maybe not the very beginning. That's 150 years ago, but let's go back maybe 30 years to around where the redistricting started to happen, and also the census started to change a little bit.
Yeah, and before, everybody got their census forms in the mail.
Yeah.
But this last census, anybody with a P.O. box did not get forms sent to them.
So the only way you're getting a census form is if you have a physical address listed, not if you have a P.O. box listed.
Not just that you have a physical address, but that your mail is delivered to your physical address.
Okay, and that's key to some of this.
That's key. And this is really a big North Dakota issue, not just a tribal issue. Because you have to be in a big enough town to have home delivery in
mm-hmm.
order to get census forms. Not a single city in Rolette County got census forms.
Okay.
And I think you need 1,800, 2,000, something like that.
Give or take in that area.
But so if you didn't get census forms, you were just directed to go online and do it there.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, every time you create another leap, fewer people participate.
Yep. And even at this time, a lot of times with the census, it's common to see people going door to door knocking. Well, this was right in the middle of the beginning of COVID pandemic.
Right in the middle of COVID, people were scared. If they didn't know somebody, a lot of times they wouldn't answer the door.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing against the workers, but it was.
You had fewer people signing up to work for it too at that point, I'm sure.
They had trouble getting workers. Yes, they did. And so the net effect, Rolette County, and I was actually going in thinking Rolette County would get split because
mm-hmm.
there's too many people. The tribe said they had 17,500 tribal members in the county. Indian Health Service said there was 19,000. And, according to the previous undercounted census, we were at 14,400 or something.
So you're not going to think there's going to be anything less probably than 14 or so thousand.
No, we hadn't seen any big decline in school enrollment
mm-hmm.
or anything like that. And all of a sudden, we're down, I think around 12,000. Not enough for its own legislative district like it had been for years.
Decades at that point.
Yeah, so that's where it opened up the possibility, and basically they went and got Langdon and brought it into the district.
That expanded district now.
Yeah. Now the census figures into this even more, because the results from the census came in months later
mm-hmm.
than they ever had.
Okay.
So it was a real rush to do the redistricting.
Yep.
Very little time for public input.
As soon as you get those census results, they're ready to start trying to redistrict.
They were going, and then even as a legislator, only the people on the redistricting committee got the special software so they could play around and move and see. The tribes didn't get that. Nobody else got that. So you had to sit there and physically take census tract by census tract and add it all up.
You're almost putting pins on a map on a wall at that point.
Pretty close. I have no idea how they actually got it done. And then here it comes then after a rush thing, or here's the proposal. The Spirit Lake and Turtle Mountain came together, actually had a map that works population-wise by only changing two districts, District 9 and is it 14?
I think 14's up there, yep.
Only those two, and I was actually amazed that they could come with this map.
Sure, they actually came with something at that point. You weren't.
Yeah, and and then it was, how come this is so late? How come, it was all the, and even some of the legislators were standing up on the floor saying, oh, if we do this, that we'll get sued because we're like packing them. And it's like, well, no, the percentage in the whole district is lower than the percentage in the sub-district the way you want to do it. And that would still be my basic complaint about the sub-districts, the way they did it. And no one in Turtle Mountain ever asked for a sub-district.
So where did the sub-districting idea come from then?
Well, MHA Nation wanted one.
Okay.
And that's one of the problems you have, too, that people think if one Native American speaks, he speaks for all Native Americans. They might recognize tribal sovereignty as this concept, but they don't recognize this tribe is sovereign from that tribe is sovereign from that tribe. There's similarities, but it would be just like calling up the South Dakota governor and asking, what's the North Dakota position?
Yeah, it's
we're similar in a lot of ways,
but separate entities.
But we're still separate. And then there was in a tribal relations committee, there was a lady who spoke in favor of sub-districts. She wasn't a tribal representative. The Turtle Mountain Tribal Council wasn't even in the room while she spoke.
Really?
Yeah, it was. And they were off to lunch and they didn't come back yet. So no one, they really didn't set any flags off with them, or no one could correct the whole thing. And this, by the time it traveled from the Tribal Relations Committee to the Redistricting Committee, was like, the tribes want subdivision.
Now we're ready to do a subdivision. It was pretty much, the decision was almost made up at that point.
Pretty much. And the thing that ended up happening was, here you take a district that majority of people in it's tribal, and that wouldn't vary with either version. It's that actually still the majority of people would be tribal. But by sub-districting, you had one district that was a majority tribal and another district that wasn't. So it's like it limited their ability. They didn't get to vote for 2 representatives. They only got to vote for 1 representative.
Yeah, it makes things more limited. And also in that same capacity, it sets a different precedent for the state of North Dakota, because had we subdivided districts prior to that?
Not to my knowledge.
Sure. So at that point, you're now setting a new precedent for the state to go forward if they want to do this elsewhere. If in further census redistrictings, they'd have the ability to do so a lot easier now.
Where we've done things differently was like any district that had an air base in it, military base, they would merge 2 districts together, because we know those base people, they never participate. So this way we can get more representation.
Make sure District 38 is as big as it can be.
I don't agree with it. I think it limits the people in Minot Air Force Base and Grand Forks Air Force Base from having representatives that are concerned about their concerns.
Without a doubt. I mean, that's a great point. You could actually have Minot Air Force Base, especially. Grand Forks is definitely smaller. But Minot, you could have it in its own district. It is large enough by all means.
Well, that's why Minot would lose $5 million in education aid, and Grand Forks would only lose $3 million.
Sure. Okay. We get the Air Force Base on that one. No, that makes sense when you start putting it together. So now we have the sub-district idea coming to light, and this is kind of taking hold of everyone in the legislature at that point.
Yeah, and some people think everything should be subdivided. As a minority member, I don't like that idea, because it would give the supermajority the ability, if anytime you had 2 minority in one district, they can draw the line wherever they want to make sure both of them are in the same sub-district.
Sure. So you get
it's another way to gerrymander.
It's 9A and 9B, and one's going to be one way and the other's going to be the other way.
You could draw the line vertically one time, horizontally the next time. I mean,
however you want to flip it around,
there would be a lot of room for manipulation in there.
Sure. And obviously gerrymandering is a thing that we've seen around the nation. It's not something we're not prone to happening here or immune to happen to us in North Dakota as well.
Yeah, and gerrymandering in general for political purposes,
it's going to happen.
Really forbidden.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
It's which groups do you hook while you're doing your gerrymandering? That's the part that's forbidden. So like, down south, you might have a concentration of minority people, and then they split them all out so they don't get to elect anybody. Or they do the other thing, they give them one district where maybe they could have had 2 or 3.
2 or parts of 3 at that point. Yeah, where now one's a very competitive and you have 2 guaranteed. Yeah. Instead, you're throwing everything into one big district.
Yeah, I think Rolette County was a little like that. That's part of why Rolette County was always its own district. I always kidded about having a skull and crossbone on it there that kills Republicans. And so they would just leave us alone.
Sure. And now, when this redistricting was coming to light and it was starting to finally go through the process of the committee into the state legislature, was there a lot of pushback against the subdividing it at that stage?
It was so fast that I'm not sure that the Turtle Mountain, I know initially like Spirit Lake had asked for a subdivision, but then when they checked it, there was no way to get for them to get a majority based on that. And interestingly enough, the chairman of the committee represented Spirit Lake.
Really? Okay, so he's from that area of Devil's Lake.
When it came with Spirit Lake and Turtle Mountain together, he was probably the strongest opposition to putting them together.
Interesting. You'd think you'd want, and it would be. Well, we won't go down that too far, but it raises.
I'm sitting there going, he's their representative. Why is he opposing what they want? You know,
it raises a question, to say the least, at that stage. Yeah. So now we're starting to agree on it, and all of a sudden it passes. And then February of 2022, I believe, is when was it the Turtle Mountain Band Chippewa and the Spirit Lake tribe come together and they initiate the very first lawsuit involved in it.
Yes,
where they're accusing violation of the Voting Rights Act.
Yes, and if you look historically at rulings, I would say, yeah. And I mean, even the judge agreed, yes. You know, and at the hearing, it was most of the objections that the state made to their plan were very easily slapped down.
Okay.
And then the judge gave the state a period of time to do something, and like they kind of just pushed papers around and didn't really start to make any decisions. So then he goes, okay, now here it is. It's what the tribes put forward.
And that was, I believe, in sometime in 2023 when that ruling came to light. And I believe they had until last year to start doing something.
Well, it had to be in time for the
election of
you know, so you get that push.
Little caveat there.
Yeah, and so then we ended up with a District 9 that was unique, and it does look a little unusual. You know, there's Rolette County, then a thin slice of Pierce County, and then down into take a bunch of Benson County, a little bit of Eddy County, and then I learned as secretary, the western border of Spirit Lake is an old railroad bed. And the eastern border is an old railroad bed. And we end up with 1 or 2 people in Ramsey County and Nelson County. I would have been okay if they would have put that
handful of people could have stayed over still. Yeah. Feels when you have 5-6 people, you're nitpicking a little bit at that point.
It just, you know, I mean, and I was always, Rolette County was great. I mean, it was small, you get around, a couple newspapers and stuff. Suddenly, as a secretary, I got 7 counties.
Okay, so now all of a sudden you have a lot more county even laws to figure out at that point that you have to work around. You have a lot more ground to cover if you're trying to campaign at some point.
Yes. It's still not like some of the districts are, you know, where you know you better pack a lunch.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah,
you know, but it's it suddenly was a lot bigger. You could almost walk to Rolette County. I mean, it was it's 5 townships by 5 townships. Yeah, and, you know, just really
very narrow little box up there. Kind of
very
thing.
Convenient. It was nice. There was no TV, so you didn't have to pay for advertising on TV.
It was all radio.
I think my first election, I don't know if I spent $100.
There you go. That's a key to election strategy right there to save money on that end.
It's different, but here we are now. We're a little more spread out and everything, and then it was interesting. The Republicans nominated a couple tribal members too, so it was a bit more
contentious than it typically would have been.
They were known people, you know. And so on. So, you know, it comes there. But, you know, here's the thing now the basic thing is, as individuals or tribes or whatever, you have no standing.
Okay.
Because the current ruling by the appeals court is only the Department of Justice can bring a lawsuit.
Sure. That's what they're arguing.
That's
why
the
it was,
argument,
okay.
and that's why it's actually, it's still like,
because you have the district judge ruling that, hey,
it's illegal.
The argument is correct, but the minutia of how it was filed.
You don't actually have legal standing to come into court and argue that your rights have been violated.
Even though he agrees that they had in this case. And
then, it gets back to, we look back, and there were a lot of civil rights cases brought by the Department of Justice at one time. But to be honest, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of them brought nowadays. So now you have to rely on the government that really has been participating in not potentially, not giving you your rights. And you have to rely on them to file the lawsuit.
Which, regardless of administration over the last decade, there's been questions about the Justice Department.
It shouldn't be that this administration only files lawsuits on Republican gerrymandering and the next one only files lawsuits on Democrat gerrymandering. That shouldn't be that way.
In theory, it should be an objective thing where if something, regardless of side, violates something, they should be filing towards it.
But it gets to be a real interesting legal question of, here you are, your civil rights are being violated, but you have no standing to bring a court case.
That's such a tricky slope at that point. Like, you have to go to someone in the Justice Department to have them advocate for you.
Yeah, it just, I can't think of any other case of discrimination or whatever that would have that sort of criteria that the government has to file for you. It's almost like you have to win your case in order to have a case.
At that stage, it's effectively what it's coming into at that point.
Yeah.
So now we're sitting where it's gone all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and basically they just got a preliminary stay where until the Supreme Court makes a decision whether to hear the case or not, that it's just going to stay as it is until they make that decision anyway.
Yeah.
And if they make a decision to hear the case, I would expect another injunction to say, okay, it's going to wait until we make a ruling on this.
And if it just continues as is and they throw it out, then we're right back at square one, and this has been a waste of everyone's.
We're back to the district as it was before the last election.
Yeah.
And then, strange to me, Legislative Council said, oh, well, since the Constitution says you have to live in the district you represent, maybe these people wouldn't be representatives anymore. Well, that would be
a whole nother.
That would be 3 out of the 6.
Yeah.
And that's really strange to me because every time we redistrict, there are representatives and senators who no longer are in the district from which they got elected.
So that's a common thing upon redistricting.
Yeah, I mean, it just happens. And we don't say, oh, you're done today as soon as we voted on this map, you're done. And now there's nobody representing that area till we get another
next election. They handle it and they stick it out until the following election cycle.
That's the way it's always been done. And that's the way it was done even after the passage of you have to live in your district.
Sure. Even after that was a forced thing, it was still, this person was effectively the steward until the follering election cycle.
And nobody brought lawsuits saying on that basis saying somebody can't be there. There were a couple legislators that I think personally, I don't know for a fact, but personally I think weren't living in their district for a period of time. It gets iffy with some of the people. They go to the lake cabin in Arizona so much, I'm not sure they spend half their time here.
What is your actual physical address at that point? Yeah.
Well, and it doesn't say where your residency is.
It's where you spend.
It's where do you live.
Okay, yeah.
But it's been interpreted like living and residency are the same thing. Well, I could move out of state and still maintain my residency here for years.
Still pay the bills and have.
But I wouldn't be living here.
Yeah.
So. And we did after the one session. The one guy that represented District 4 moved to Minnesota with the love of his life. And
sure.
He dragged it out, so he didn't resign until it was too late for them to elect somebody to replace him.
So the district had to appoint someone
so the
at that point.
Appointed someone.
Okay. And that just brings it all back to full circle a little bit with that.
And that's the problem. Again, it gets back to, it's kind of, I think, the thing that drives the Ethics Commission of, can you trust the legislature to be ethical when it's ruling the legislature? I mean, the majority leader and stuff knew that he wasn't living in the state, yet nothing's done about it. He keeps getting his Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Still,
it was Sanford at that time. I don't
still
remember.
Gets benefits.
Gets benefits. Gets pay. Yeah.
And this might be slightly different, but we can turn into this a little bit too. I mean, at this stage with the Ethics Commission, how can it be empowered to do what it was originally supposed to do?
Well, I think it's empowered by the Constitution. I was arguing this week that the North Dakota has at least 5 branches of government. We have the executive, the legislative, the judicial, and then we have the State Board of Higher Education, which is often pointed to as a separate branch because they get to run
they have
higher ed.
Very autonomous.
And the Ethics Commission created by I would argue is actually like a separate and intentionally separate branch of government to look at ethics.
To be a separate entity, to be a watchdog of the rest of them at that
and
point.
it talks about in the Constitution that they can make rules and stuff like that. So I don't know what this talk about, they can't make rules, the legislature's got to make rules.
One of the arguments I've heard in that is that they're not constitutionally knowledgeable enough to be making the rules. So even if that's the case, should they not be provided with the proper education to do so then?
Well, I guess if nothing else, we could solve that pretty easily, just like we have it now, where if you're putting together a petition, you can have legislative council look at it and draft it. I mean, I wouldn't see personally any big problem with the Ethics Commission having access to legislative council and drafting legislation, or you could give them their own staff. A lot of the executive agencies do draft their own legislation.
Without a doubt, you see it from the DOT.
There's a whole how you do it type thing, and they provide training and so on. I haven't seen anything they've done that's been so complicated that I think they're not capable of writing up what they intend.
Sure. And on a similar note too with them, so maybe some people, because a lot of the positions are appointed, maybe people could argue that it could be, stacked poorly, or however you want to make that argument. Would it be better to elect maybe not the entire commission, but the chairman of the commission?
I could very easily see that. I kind of... my strongest feelings on appointments is I don't believe the governor should appoint Supreme Court justices.
That's fair.
The legislature, we had that fight, and the legislature says, no, the governor can't appoint a legislator. But somehow I think if you're going to appoint a seat, it should be run through a judicial committee that they're in their own branch. It's one of those things because I don't know I know the majority of the current justices were originally appointed by the governor.
Okay.
So if you're a district judge and you're hoping for Supreme Court at some time, your best shot is to be good friends to the governor.
Sure. Or who's going to be governor in 4 to 8 years from now. Yeah.
But that's, you wouldn't want to be ruling against the state.
Sure. At that point. Yeah. You don't want to have,
there's this pressure there.
There's something that could lead to contention down the line.
Yeah. And so to me, either you do it where some judicial group appointed it, or when somebody recuses themselves, they bring in district judges now and stuff, do it all the time. I wouldn't have any big problem with leaving the seat open and having it handled that way until the next election and have the people elect them.
I think, people elect the Supreme Court justices at that stage. Yeah. And I think that would be a fair move, especially so with how we have, look how many other positions we have as elected officials in this state.
We have a general problem with commissions and boards and stuff in this state. For instance, we'll pick on the dental board.
Sure.
Majority of them are dentists. You can't be a dental hygienist unless you work for a dentist.
Okay.
They won't allow dental therapists, a nationally recognized
entity,
to even come to North Dakota and be licensed.
Really? So this is effectively, probably loosely, but this is effectively the dental equivalent of like a nurse practitioner.
Yes.
Oh, sure.
It's trained exactly with them. And the people in other states that use them, many of the dentists will admit that they do better work than the dentist does.
Sure. And
because the dentist is doing so many different procedures. And then it was interesting to talk to one guy. I think he had 4 dental therapists working for him.
oh, wow.
And he said, what I didn't expect, he said, was that my income from my work went way up. Because now I'm not doing the little stuff.
Yep.
I get to do the big stuff.
Yep. You can do all of those big surgeries, the heavy hitting, the
But
root
there's
canals.
a national exam. There's, recognized training. There's really no reason. But we are very susceptible to a monopoly lawsuit because the only way you could do it is either you have a majority of consumers on that board, or the governor's supposed to have a staff member sit down there who has veto power on anything the board comes up with. And that is not done with a single board in North Dakota. So we're just waiting for the monopoly lawsuit on a lot of these boards.
Because like you were saying, most of the people that sit on that board are actively dentists.
Actively dentists,
So
yes.
yeah, all of a sudden now you can argue that in that monopolistic fashion that, hey, because all of these people are the dentist side of this industry, they're intentionally preventing the opposite side, the dental therapists.
And there was a Supreme Court case, and I think it was Georgia, it might have been Alabama, where the dentist would not allow anybody but a dentist to apply teeth whiteners.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of money in teeth whitening.
I imagine, it works out well.
And they can argue, well, look, this really strong stuff that we're using and stuff, people should be trained, but I don't know. The hygienists seem to do just fine. But that they were, and that went all that way. And that was, yes, they're a monopoly. Yes, they're restraining trade. There's no reason other people can't be doing this and so on. So,
And now here in North Dakota with the dental board specifically, it can be very contentious in that regard. And then when you look at it on a wider scale, like back to the Ethics Commission, you have all of these people that are strictly appointees of the governor.
Yeah, and remember, just a short time ago, we had the big PERS board fight where the executive director came down to the legislature, and the only thing he did was he testified exactly as his board told him to.
Okay.
Criminal.
That's a little questionable to say the least, but
so,
hey.
Suddenly everything goes in and they change the laws so that the different people that appointed people could kick them off at any time. And they did it. They went through the whole thing. They kicked off the current, at that time, PERS board, put in a different PERS board just to fire that guy.
Just to go over and above and around. And
yeah, so what stops them from doing the same thing on the Ethics Commission? If the Ethics Commission started to become rather assertive with potentially the governor or the Attorney General.
Just as an example, like obviously right now, them and the Attorney General are having a big back and forth where there's some accusations going between them. So great example at that point. I mean, where could it go with them? Could they end up on the flip side getting shut down because of all of this too?
That's the thing is, like the governor appoints them. Does the governor have the right to fire him anytime he wants? Doesn't say it any place, but it could by the next session.
It's one of those, it's a gray area. So if it doesn't say you can't explicitly, it means you can probably find a way where you can still.
Yeah, and the fact that they did that very thing with the PERS board makes you nervous about the ethics.
There is some sort of a precedent set for it at that point. So maybe it almost would be, and this would have to be, I don't even know if this would have to be something that would be voted on or if the legislature could do it, but you would almost have to move the Ethics Commission board to something similar to the PSC so that the commissioners are all elected.
Right.
And they can be, they're at least
nonpartisan, of course.
Yeah, it's same as the education and everything, but yeah, quote unquote, it'll be nonpartisan, I'm sure. And you can, and at least in theory, these people would be subject to the voters at that point.
Yeah, or maybe better would be to say they're not subject to the people they're supposed to regulate.
That's fair. Yeah, they're at the very least they're an independent entity. Yeah. Where you'd have to have some kind of watchdog to make sure they're not just trying to take everyone down, but also at the same time they can actually operate independently and not have to worry about the Attorney General getting upset at their staff and hurting morale.
Right. Yeah. So, and it still is where, they're allowed to investigate, they're allowed to do rules and fines even. They came up with the one as a $5,000 fine. that compared to other violations does look to be a little heavy
Sure.
to me. But just because something's maximum of doesn't mean that that's where you go every time.
Because because now all of a sudden you're setting whatever the event is as the maximum. This is the baseline for the worst of the worst.
Yeah, and let's look at the current laws concerning elections. It's like the only penalties that are available are removal from the ballot and removal from office.
Sure.
Well, it's kind of almost like saying if you're speeding, we're going to drag you out and shoot you in the back of the head.
Jeepers.
It's never going to happen.
Yeah. I believe the last time the governor removed a public official from office was in like 86 or 87. Yeah. There was a county sheriff that got taken out, I think.
Yeah.
But I mean, the closest thing we've seen now was the Bismarck auditor treasurer situation happening right now, where they have had a whole plethora of issues, but the governor and attorney general both issued an opinion on it, pretty much putting it to the people to decide to vote come next election cycle.
Yeah, and there gets to be the question of, is it a disagreement or is there actually something wrong here?
Yeah.
You know, there's always a gray area on a lot of that. So we don't want to see where people can just be willy-nilly removed, but you know, if somebody's clearly,
there has to be a process.
There has to be a process. Yeah. So that's it. So, you know, and this kind of all comes in to the same thing of the North Dakota government. When you look at it, the entire thing is set up such that the foundation of ethics and everything else is that not everyone at the table is exactly the same.
It's supposed to bring a diverse set of mindsets there.
Yeah. And unfortunately, at this period in time, that doesn't happen. So this is part of why people are really worried about having some ethics enforcement and stuff, because there isn't someone right there, especially like they go into executive session.
How do you can't guarantee anything.
Police any of that,
yeah.
You know? And so that's the problem we're in now, is that, you know, and people in general, you know, I mean, you see it in criminal law where, throw the dirty, rotten scoundrel in jail, and, but Jimmy's a good boy because I know Jimmy.
Yeah.
And he did exactly the same thing as that guy, but
he's different. I know this one. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, so we see that a lot. And that's the thing. It's a small state in government. Everybody gets to know everybody, and it's tough. So even when we've had a violation, it's a clear violation, it's like people are almost offended if somebody points out the violation. And why should we do anything? Why should we do anything about this? You know, and that's the problem, is that there's this big, like I say, there's all these strict laws, but I can't think of the last time
they were enforced.
Sure.
And I think you made a good point in that too. And it's not even necessarily an intentional thing. It's part of living in a small state. When people get involved in this business, there's a limited amount of people that do this, and everyone, for better or for worse, gets to know each other pretty well at a certain point. Yeah. If you stay in it anyways.
Yeah. But it's a thing like you know, if you're advertising a political ad that's clearly, if anything can be clear in politics, clearly incorrect.
Yeah.
You know, you're supposed to take that off the air or out of the
and
stuff.
There's supposed to be a retraction and everything.
Yeah, and it just doesn't seem like it really happens, you know. Or I think of the one year where Al Jaeger was after the one group, because when they took a picture of themselves handing the petitions in, the seal of North Dakota sat here. You can't use that picture.
On an arbitrary, because something got caught in the background of the picture that was taken. Okay.
But Julie Fedorchak stood in front of the one in the Great Hall and put that on her brochures, and that was okay.
Interesting. Former public service commissioner, current congresswoman for the state in her first term right now.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of interesting things that have come to light with a lot of these things.
So that's the thing. And then, you know, somehow, you know, and people have talked about having a independent solicitor, basically, not the attorney general, not under the attorney general,
not the auditor.
Yeah, the way it is right now, after Wayne Stenium made the attorney general opinion that if anything in the Little Missouri grasslands had been done, super unit for petroleum had been done illegally, it was done in Burleigh County, so you couldn't petition there.
You had to petition in the capital of this.
Yeah, and of course it was unique because we had this petition for a grand jury to be formed, and then the Attorney General, whose opinion is not supposed to decide facts, decided the fact that if the law was broken, it was broken in Burleigh County.
That seems to be a recurring theme from the former Attorney General.
So what's happened now is we've made the Burleigh County State's Attorney is actually the individual that's supposed to ride over everybody in state government. But we don't give him a penny to do it. But it's just an expectation that's now put on his plate, indirectly at least, if not directly, because of how this opinion has transpired. Yeah, we saw it with Doctor, where, of course, they recused themselves because they had hired Stenium's worker.
Sure.
And so there was too close. They were involved in it. So then they recused themselves. So they went out to McLean County eventually. But in general, I mean, I don't think the Burleigh County State's Attorney is given a big investigatory budget to check into problems in state government. So
unless something specifically comes to them almost filed and sealed.
So we have this ethics commission. You know, we've kind of had these couple cases where we bring in the Attorney General was always in charge of this. We bring in an outside investigator with no power from Montana or South Dakota, and then conclude, I don't know anything, and then it would go away. Well, now you have the Ethics Commission,
who in
effectively
theory
doing a lot of the investigatory work to say, looks to us like something really did happen here or not, before passing it on to the state's attorney. You know,
and they're effectively were designed to replace that outside attorney at that point that would come in and do a special investigation. They should be the entity that does it regardless at that stage.
Well, yeah. And
barring maybe a recusal that's necessary or whatever.
And not everything has to kick the guy out of office or whatever. You know, sometimes it's
accusations can be wrong. Yeah.
And if you were found wrong by the Ethics Commission, remember, that's not a criminal complaint. You don't have a criminal record for violating that.
No.
But if the only thing is everything has to go to the state's attorney, then
there's a potential for it to come from that.
Then it becomes criminal. The state's attorney isn't going to, enforce some rule and stuff. And really, on some of this stuff, where there's administrative agencies, they enforce their rules. But on this, there really is no administrative agency in charge.
It's kind of a gray area where everything's just kind of bouncing around.
And the Ethics Commission is not an administrative agency, so they don't have to follow the administrative rules process.
Okay.
But they're kind of like an administrative agency because the governor's appointing them.
They're a very interesting subject at that point, because if they were an administrative agency with full governor appointal, like most of the cabinet positions you'll see are, then they're subject to all those rules and regulations. But in theory, because of how they were developed to be this policing force, for lack of better term, they were given the ability not to be so. However, they're still all appointed by the governor.
Yeah. So they get kind of government infrastructure again. With government in North Dakota at this period of time hasn't really had a good way to handle this. And, and it kind of goes back to the census, where we see the tribes bringing a lawsuit. The state of North Dakota should have been suing the Census Bureau because every little town in North Dakota got undercut. And that means we get less federal funds. And that, it's not a case where we're going to go to less than one representative in Congress. That's not going to affect
We're already at the minimum
there. But you look at all the federal things that are done based on census population. North Dakota census population became more seriously undercounted when the census changed that. It's obvious when you look at the tribes, but like I say, in Rolette County, it happened in every town in the county.
And on the flip side of that too, then this is almost a bigger picture thing than just the redistricting here, because this is a census law. This is something that's happening across the country then. So if it's happening here in North Dakota, imagine what it's doing to rural Wyoming or anywhere like that.
Yeah, all those things. And it's kind of funny as it drags out. It surprised me to find that basically as a census, you can't challenge the count.
Really? There
is a process where if you wanted to pay for it now, you could do another count. But
in theory, what they say is
what you can challenge is the boundary of the census that you could say units that you'd say, oh, you screwed up here and you didn't include this trailer court where it should have probably been done or something. You can challenge those. But the ultimate count, you can't do it. So it was interesting. I was on one call where we were discussing this with the Census Bureau. And the one guy is tribal chairman. He says, the official population count for my tribe is 0. I can assure you we have more than no people.
I am at least one.
And as far as I know, that count has never been changed.
That's incredible. So in theory, there's still the whole tribe is listed as they disappeared.
I don't know where they send the check.
Yeah.
I just, yeah.
And that kind of brings it all back to where we're at now, where we're waiting for a final resolution on the redistricting. Yeah. But this really could be a bigger question that's brought to light to the Census Bureau.
Well, I think it should be by the time the next census rolls around. It's actually very easily controllable. If your city doesn't have home delivery, I could understand and mine it, that, oh, we don't want to double send and,
things of that nature.
Home delivery and stuff. But like Rolla, where I live, Rolla doesn't get home delivery. So why can't you contact the places that don't have home delivery and send the census forms to the P.O. boxes in those places?
Exactly.
I think, I thought about it afterwards, I'm not sure if I started doing business out of a UPS box that says Suite 23, I'm not so sure I wouldn't get census forms.
Sure, at that point, because of that, just how it's worded at that point or how it's listed, that's all the difference it makes.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting twists to this. I could actually pay the post office in Rolla and use the physical address of the post office as my address,
and that would count.
And they would send me forms.
I don't understand why it's so hard just to add the P.O. box as an additional option. And I mean, I guess what would the argument be? You could say that if you're sending it to P.O. boxes, someone could be artificially listing people and you're going to get miscounts. I don't
know. I mean, we have it as a state where we have the counties with the mail-in elections.
Yeah.
That they keep sending, if you voted the last election, they keep sending ballots to that address until it's returned undeliverable.
Okay, so regardless, if you did
you could have 5 people getting ballots, and they move out of state, and one guy moves in, and one day he'll wake up and there'll be 5 ballots with other people's
for these people that all moved out. Yeah,
in his box.
Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting way to go about that, but
so,
I guess I can see it streamlines thing a little bit.
And most people aren't going to vote other people's ballots.
No.
So you always have a little fudge factor, but like I say, it's frustrating in that the Census Bureau knew that they have trouble counting tribal members to start with, and then they made it even more difficult to count tribal members. And then at the same time, they bend over backwards to allow people living in college dorms to be counted, even if the college is shut down and they're not there on the day they're supposed to be there to be counted.
So they could have dropped out in theory at that point and say they hadn't finalized the paperwork, whatever it takes, and you're just taking the college dean's word at that point.
Yep, that's exactly what they did. And I don't know how many of those people got counted twice.
Yeah, how many got, especially if they're out-of-state students or something, how many got counted, or even if they're in-state, they live in Fargo, but they're going to college in Dakota College Botno or something. Like now all of a sudden you could be counted in both locations.
Yeah, a lot of students will intentionally maintain their residence and stuff back home.
At home.
Yeah.
It makes it easier that way.
Yeah, that's your permanent address.
Mom and dad can take care of everything while you're gone, and you can pick up anything you need when you come home.
And do jury duty.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you don't got to worry about getting kicked out of jury duty at that point. You're probably a good chance unless you say the wrong things.
There's all these quirks, and stuff.
Yeah.
And people, I mean, this lawsuit is really a big lawsuit because there's all these things coming in that really, and because it's in conflict with previous things. I would think it's never 100% that the Supreme Court's going to rule.
Mm-hmm.
But I would think there'd be a pretty high percentage they're going to accept this lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
And if they said, yes, it's correct that individuals and so on can't bring lawsuits, civil rights lawsuits over voting, that really is going to change the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's a big decision.
This has a lot more implications than people might realize, and especially not just for North Dakota, but for the rest of the country at this point.
Yeah, it really does.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a unusual thing, and it's too bad that it happened. I can remember in the legislative session, I say, "Hey, look, here they came up with this. This works. It only changes 2 districts. There's really no good reason not to do this."
Mm-hmm.
And then people came up with whatever reason they wanted not to do that. But
fair. And now we're here.
We're
waiting the Supreme
I don't
Court.
know how much the state spent now on that whole thing, but it's a couple bucks.
Yeah, it's not. I think more than a couple bucks too. Not a cheap process anytime, and you understand this firsthand, anytime you're going through the legal system, it's never a cheap process.
No, especially if you go out and hire outside counsel and stuff, it starts going pretty fast.
Yeah.
But the thing was, I guess it's really a situation where there's a good question. Now we sit and, like I say, even it's strange to me how the legislative council said maybe those people wouldn't be in the legislature right that day, because that would be Senator Weston wouldn't be.
Yeah, he would be axed at that
Donna
point.
Henderson.
Yeah.
Yep.
So in theory, even if the redistricting changes, however it works, if it reverts back, you would think still be the placeholders till that next election.
Yeah, that's the way it's always been.
Exactly. But now all of a sudden there's a possibility they could try to throw a wrench in that.
Yeah, and partial terms don't work anymore with the term limits the way they are.
And which also on the ballot next year, a potential change to the term limits makes a little bit more of a defining note to them, and possibly changes it to what I think it goes up to 12 instead of 8 years, I believe.
Yeah, and I haven't spent a lot of time on that, but 8 years, and realize 8 years is not 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's you can't get elected if by the end of your term it would be 8 years. So like I get back to the census. There's a bunch of legislators that are elected on a 2-year term right after a census. Well, then they could run one time for a 4-year term, have their 6 years, and they're out.
Mm-hmm. Then they're done at that. They're hosed out of 2 years.
If let's say some way that the Attorney General rules, okay, these people are gone, and then the district party the party that they represented, their district, would reappoint somebody. Mm-hmm. If somebody comes in and gets appointed for 3 months, they can only get elected once.
At that, because of the way it's technically worded at this stage, that would count as that first term then.
Yeah, because they couldn't run twice for 4-year terms, because that would be 8 years and 3 months, and they can't do it.
So now, and I don't think at this stage, I think they're going to they might get worked around a little bit, but I don't foresee term limits going away at this stage. Obviously, they're encapsulated with the legislature and the governor himself as well. Do you foresee potentially happening where term limits get assessed or onto other state elected officials, whether it be the state auditor, state attorney general, secretary of state?
I was really surprised that it only limited itself to the governor and so on. I kind of thought maybe that's because of the seats that the people that carried the petitions wanted to affect.
Sure. Okay.
That maybe they had more problem with them than other people. But I see no good reason why the governor should have a limit and Public Service Commission doesn't.
If we're going to do it to 1, why not do it to the remainder at that point, especially if it's a partisan elected official as well?
Right. So that's the thing. Is it and elected in general? We have voter knowledge is always a difficult thing, especially in the lesser offices.
For sure.
So the governor gets pretty hammered out.
But who knows what the state auditor does, or the state treasurer all the time. Well, you're far the exception to the norm, and I'm at least the exception to the norm of people under 30. So,
right.
But generally speaking, you ask someone what the state auditor does, the odds of them knowing I think, are less than the odds of them not knowing.
And there's a lot of quirks. Like, okay, so if he audits a state agency, it's basically a performance audit by automatic. If you petition him to audit the Minot school, it's not a performance audit.
It's different.
It's basically, do the books balance?
Sure.
So people don't catch all those quirks. And then it's funny because he's been hammered on how much it costs to have him do some of these audits, but at the same time, the cost there's a waiting list
of things that want or need to be audited.
That want him, because you'd probably cut your fees at least in half having the state auditor audit you
compared
versus,
to outside
versus a private company that really doesn't even want to audit you.
Yeah. That you have to pay to come up from the Twin Cities to do it or something.
So I to be honest, I was let's get enough people in the auditor's office so at least everyone who wants to be audited by the state office can be audited by the state office.
That's fair. Supply them with the staff to do so.
Well, it comes back to, by not doing that, you're increasing the costs of local government.
Yeah, it's an indirect blowback at that stage.
And this is the thing. Like, we look at property taxes, where it used to be 1% on a $75,000 home, and now it's 1.5% on a $400,000 home. Part of that, and we argued when they cut the income tax that you're shoving this off. Well, what's happened is the responsibilities of government and the cost of doing things has greatly increased, and much of it got shoved off to the locals, where basically all they had was property tax. And now, of course, there's sales tax, which works okay for some, but not for everyone.
They can get, like, for the bigger cities, Minot, Fargo, it's great. The lesser cities where, how many people come through Rolla to spend sales tax money?
Rolette County, we keep about 1/3 of our retail dollars in the county.
Okay, fair.
It's
all
horrible.
Yeah, it's all pretty much outsourced at that stage.
So there's places that I thought at one time, if we were going to rely on sales tax, the state should have put a couple pennies on and then redistributed it and been more efficient and more uniform. And interestingly, you can go to the cities in the state with the highest sales tax, and none of them are happy about their property tax. It
feels like it's always going to be something that comes back. And now, especially, just the way it transpired over this legislative session, it's likely going to come back to affect us in the next cycle as well. Even on top of that, they don't have anything. It's only guaranteed through that next session. They have to effectively.
They have to act.
Something will have to come from it in a year and a half from now.
And there'll be a lot of ideas and.
There was 50 some this year.
Well, they're out there, and most of them never saw the light of day, or they were very similar to those that did. Which is kind of all part of the process and stuff too. And
consolidating.
Farmers aren't happy because they didn't get anything new. And then you get people who live in the city say, well, Lucky Farmer doesn't pay anything on his house, on his buildings. Well, the thing is, say you take Ward County, 1,500 acre farm. Probably a little smaller than average now. That's 10 quarters. Each quarter is probably close to $1,000. So he's paying $10,000 in property tax.
Coming every year.
And for not necessarily the best paying job in town.
Exactly. It depends on the year, but some years it's a lot worse than others.
And then you can go and you can take some medical office or whatever, and they don't pay near as much tax on that, even though they're generating a lot of income. And so it's,
especially
how do you get fair? And you come, and I know Minot's had a concern with daycare. A lot of places have had a concern with
That's
daycare.
A national thing,
and you look at Denmark. A single mother in Denmark pays about 2% of her salary for daycare.
Just a minuscule amount. Where here you're worried if
you just got out of college and now you're paying like you're putting your kid through college.
You're immediately you become a two income household, and you have 2 kids. All of a sudden now one of your incomes is almost paying exclusively for the child care.
And it wasn't many years ago. We talk housing. Not many years ago, the average first home purchase was at 29. Now it's 39. because
I'm trying to get there to that 29 mark, but it's not a great market.
it's almost like if you take between my generation and then this generation, it's like they take out a home mortgage to get an education, and then you got to pay off your home mortgage before you can get your home mortgage.
Your actual home mortgage at that point.
And it seems like the whole goal is just to keep everybody in debt, paying rent to the big guys the whole time.
Whoever it may be at that point. And
I mean, education's great. To be honest, I cannot figure out how it costs as much as it does.
No, one thing I might get a lot of flack for, but I don't regret to any extent, is not going to college. I went to growing up, all I ever heard was, if you don't go to college, you're not going to do anything. And I mean, there's clearly ways you can go out there and become educated on subjects without having to get a formal education on it. Again, this isn't knocking college by any degree, but the fact that it costs as much as it does, it makes it untenable. Especially, how do you want to go get a teaching degree that's going to cost 4 times what your first year's annual salary is going to be?
Well, we're at the point you don't need a teaching degree anymore.
It's getting, if you want to substitute, it's not far away.
So that's the thing is, if you just can't get anybody and you got to have somebody, eventually you decide somebody's better than nobody.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was at the one conference and they said we had one person in the state taking courses so they could become licensed to teach physics. There's one student in the state.
Wow. Never forget my senior year physics class. There's 3 of us. But it shows, though.
Well, when you go to college now, there's a very good chance that your physics teacher is from Pakistan or India.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to start seeing that in the schools, because if people don't take those.
It's a similar thing to what you'll see in the medical field sometimes. When you see someone from an example I know is from the Philippines, that they go get their nursing degree in the Philippines. It's vastly cheaper, and time consuming is probably similar, but it might be a little on the shorter side. So now they have a registered nursing degree and they're able to come to the United States and work immediately on it, where they're not in nearly the amount of debt that any of our nursing students coming out of college are.
I joked when we built the new medical school at UND, we should have built it in the Philippines.
Yeah.
We could have flown the kids over and
would have been cheaper.
Saved all kinds of money.
Yeah. And
our doctor at that time was coming from the Philippines anyway. So
the difference would have been, at that stage. Oh, you got to love it, don't you?
I guess so. We don't have much choice about that.
We're stuck in it. Well, we've discussed a lot today. We went from redistricting, we went to the Ethics Commission, we've went a little bit to term limits, and now we've touched on the housing and loan market. Yeah. Any final kind of route you want to take here?
Well, it's a state fair time, and it's the crop's getting ready to start coming in, and people maybe get a little more busy and everything, but it's just, it's just, I wish people could focus a little bit more on North Dakota. We have so much potential, and I get angry because it still seems to me like in many ways we're just run as a colony to produce feedstocks for other places to make money on. And, and there's going to be a battle coming up on energy, another one, because when a call center goes in, your electric rates go up.
Yep.
And people, why? It's not creating many jobs. Maybe it creates jobs in China.
Let alone a call center. How about those AI databases?
Yeah.
They're already talking about when these start getting built, there's going to be rolling blackouts that can occur from it.
Yeah. No, it's so, and I don't understand why the storage of the data is so inefficient. I say, well, here we are, we're going to destroy the planet saving pictures of cute cats. Because we don't just save one copy of the picture of the cute cat and then have 10,000 pointing to the picture of the cute cat. We save picture after picture.
Every time,
Every time, yeah. So it seems to me it could be more efficient than it is, but what do I know?
Yeah, and I'm sure, like you said, that energy question will start coming to the surface. Obviously, oil, gas is always here. Wind and solar are some things, but another thing that's starting to come to the surface is nuclear here in the state, too. It's being talked about, at least.
Yeah, well, and I've been disappointed. We've been quite supportive in this state at legislative level on thorium. And so here we look at the Iranian situation. We got to blow people up because they're storing nuclear waste. Well, why don't we have a ready-to-go thorium plan where it doesn't produce nuclear fissile material and bombs and so on? Why they need the energy? There's a lot of this world that needs energy. We all do,
especially for electrical power. It's so huge for that. If it's electricity,
and so I don't understand why it's been so shoved to the side. And I realize now China just made another big step in the thorium reactor, and it looks to me like that's probably one of the things that's going to give China the big step up over the United States. Is they're going to go to countries like Iran and say, "Hey,
we're going to start putting these
put these in." And it's going to be across Africa, probably across South America, and so on. That it seems to me, back to again, this is technology that largely was U.S.
developed,
But then we just, for whatever reason, I think part of it, we wanted plutonium. We put it on the shelf.
Sure. Yeah.
And so here we are.
Well, 3 Mile Island in Chernobyl scared a lot of people, that was
with some basis.
Understand, in the moment, especially understandably so. But it's been 40 to 50 years at this stage, and we've come a long way.
Well, I drive through the Twin Cities and look at the nuclear waste stored on a sandbar out in the middle of the Mississippi River.
Just shaking your head.
This doesn't look like the right place to store nuclear waste to me.
Feels like we could find a better place for this. And I think that's so much that right now is so much of the question with it still. The dangers of it aren't nearly what they were with any kind of meltdown potential, but it's what to do with the waste, essentially.
Yeah. And I don't know if you were here when we had the big fiasco over nuclear waste by Rugby with the borehole.
I remember hearing,
it was kind of funny when it started out because I looked at the paper and I go, oh, that's the pasture that the Soil Conservation Service always used as the effects of overgrazing picture. I knew it the instant I saw the pasture. I knew right where it was at. And
lo and behold, there's a reason.
And the borehole with the cap that we have there through central North Dakota makes a lot of sense. And then of course the railroad coming through, probably come on the railroad, and one good hole could store all that really hot waste out there in Washington that's causing problems.
Sure.
So I mean, from a technology standpoint and so on, it makes sense. But if we want to talk about not in my backyard,
that's as in your backyard as it gets.
Storing nuclear waste for everybody, that's a really hot one.
Yeah.
And actually, when the Republicans passed the pore space bill, you could have taken that nuclear waste, ground it up, and injected it into the earth anywhere you wanted to in North Dakota, and no one
could have done anything at that stage.
The local landowners couldn't have done anything.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, too, you know who is in charge of regulating nuclear storage in the state of North Dakota? If I'm not mistaken, is it the North Dakota Industrial Commission?
It might be the governor.
Or the governor himself on that one?
Okay. I think it would
Maybe it's just the governor on that one.
Yeah, I think it becomes more. Yeah, I think it does. But, we
that's a rabbit hole we don't need to go down today.
No, I can talk nuclear waste for a while, too.
Well, nuclear's fun. Yeah, we can stay here.
No, I just remember when they told us, well, it's these SOx and it's all alpha radiation stuff. Well, alpha radiation won't penetrate your skin. It won't penetrate this bottle. And then in the next breath, they tell us that Watford City had caught like 100 truckloads of radioactive material going in the landfill. Well, alpha radiation doesn't go through a bag, through the outside of the truck and up to feet of air to a nuclear thing. Those were hot loads. And where did they go? Nobody knows. Nobody cares.
It doesn't matter, right?
Right.
In theory at that point.
So yeah, I don't know. I think we just, as legislators, we're not expected to know those things. Or what would bother me even worse is that if our environmental division didn't actually understand the difference. I don't think that's the case.
And that's where we're at right now. Well, hopefully with more knowledge, with more incentives going into it. I know the legislator passed some stuff for UND to start looking into it. So hopefully we can gain some more knowledge and we can help educate those people.
And I thought, just like, we came up with the idea of Project Safe Send for pesticides, I thought North Dakota should have done a Project Safe Send for nuclear waste.
Sure.
So the state could have gotten a reasonably priced bid from these places where it would properly be stored. And that bid would probably be 20% the cost of what some guy who makes like 2 pallets loads of radioactive material a year would do. We could save everybody money, and we could control it, and it'd be safer. But I know they discussed it, but the Industrial Commission didn't go for it.
Interesting. Yeah. They have a tendency to go their own way sometimes.
Well, oil men tend to be fairly independent, and they don't like to necessarily be tied in with things.
Yeah, especially a competing industry. You don't need to risk that. But on that note, Marvin, any final words of wisdom you got for us?
No, hopefully it doesn't rain every day of the fair, but
fingers crossed.
if it wasn't for the quackgrass on my lawn, it would be completely brown now. I mean, I could use a little rain, but we don't want too much. But it's like it sprinkles every night. It causes nervousness. But yeah, it's summer, and it's summer on the Midway. It's often too hot for me there. But
I hear you with that. At least we got a pretty nice week this week, with weather supposed to be in the upper 70s, lower 80s. Then
yeah, manageable.
Exactly. I'm not sweating out of my shirt at that point.
So I hope there's good attendance and everybody has a good time, and everything's safe. There aren't any accidents and stuff, and it's just a good time to be in Minot. So.
Without a doubt. It's the perfect time of year for Minot right now. Magic City. And look forward. I appreciate you coming on today. It's been a fun conversation. Not sure how this is going to be released. This might be my own podcast at this point, but we're going to get it out this week. It's been great. And as always, people should keep an eye out for what we've got brewing behind the scenes. We've got an interesting article coming up, and hopefully in the next couple weeks or something, we can get together again and talk something else that we've been working on.
And that's the thing on these issues. Often they're dealt with so superficially that people don't really hear things. And I realize some people doesn't care about the details.
Yeah.
But
that's part of the game. Yeah.
But they do make a difference, and the idea would be, hopefully, to get just, can it be fair, and people have different definitions of that too. But clearly the way things have been, I would argue, is not fair. And I wouldn't, like I say, I wouldn't completely blame North Dakota for that. It's really a situation that got set up, and then, people who say lived in a town the size of Minot or Fargo or Grand Forks their whole life, they really don't. When you say, "Oh, we don't have home delivery," they're like,
"What do you mean?
What are you talking about?
Are you sure?"
Yeah, or like when I'd say it was funny for the "Where are you?" and stuff on the stuff one day. I asked a friend of mine, he was sitting in my driveway, and I said, "Oh, push the OnStar button and ask him where I'm at, what our address is." This was during the time, and OnStar says, "You're in a wildlife refuge northeast of Rolla." Okay.
Well, yes, but no.
So that's a little bit the AI scare.
Yeah.
And AI sometimes, I think part of how you make money with AI is the same way you make money with Facebook or whatever, that you give certain things priority. I think you can buy the answer on AI from at least certain vendors.
At this stage, it's getting to that point now. I mean, especially with how AI is starting to be integrated into the medical field, like it's turning. There's a big corner being turned.
We've had AI in medicine for a long time. We just called it the standard of care.
Exactly. Now you have that third party bot coming in to work its way through it.
Yes.
Well, again, Marvin, thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure interviewing you today. I always look forward to sitting down with you.
I won't say anything more.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for watching. It's been a pleasure today. We appreciate everyone stopping in, and as always, have a great day.